Salutations everybody, it is Matty here today. I know I sound like absolute garbage, but I promise that's going to be the only thing that's garbage in this video because we're here to talk about Sonic Frontiers. If there was one game that, while I'm completely under the weather, that I had to get on camera and talk about with all of you, it was this game. Many of you already know this, but in the second half of the year, Sonic Frontiers literally was my most anticipated game of the year. For those who don't follow Retro Rebound, we've been on what I like to call a Sonic pilgrimage for the last year. I've been playing pretty much every old Sonic game and slowly developing a respect and even admiration for the charm of the blue blur. So I was really excited to see and be a part of a brand new Sonic release because as the modern games came out and we're all aware that they've been mostly duds, I've fallen out of the franchise completely. But I'm here to say that I think Sonic Frontiers actually rocks. I'm so happy with this game right now, and it was the only reason I could sit down in this chair to record a video, because I was like, I gotta tell people in a timely manner that this thing is legit. Now, what you'll notice is I am now a Sonic fan. I think that's really important to define in the review process because you can tell when someone's talking about this game and they haven't been through the ups and downs of a Sonic game, whether you've played them in the last year or you played them in the last 20 years, and people who are just bystanders and are reviewing the next big release. For me, as someone who's a Sonic fan, you're going to see certain things in this game that I appreciate that probably outside in other games wouldn't really matter that much. That's because much like how we talk about, say, Bethesda games on the channel, where we look at a technical level a little bit differently than something like a first-party AAA PlayStation release, where we expect Bethesda games to be a little buggy, so I personally don't go as hard on it because it's almost a known quantity. You can say the same thing about some of the jank in Sonic games. While some reviewers have cranked on the camera and some of the controls, for me, I'm like, this is a known quantity for like 20 years. This is what Sonic has always been. And funny enough, those aren't really my major complaints with the game. But I wanted to make that really clear before we really get started. Anyway, it's a long intro just to get this all kick-started. If you're new here and you're into reviews, discussions, previews, all that stuff for video games, you're in the right place. Consider subscribing if you're interested in a lot of Sonic content. We've been dropping a lot in anticipation of Frontiers. Over on Retro Rebound, we played Shadow the Hedgehog for the first time. We revisited Sonic Adventure 1, and we just did an almost hour-long retrospective where in all those videos, I sound much better than I do right now. So go check those out if you're interested in more Sonic content. With that, let's begin by talking about Sonic Frontiers and its opening moments. I was really pleased with the voice direction. For me, one of the worst, most agonizing parts about Sonic in the modern age has been this very kid-friendly approach with, I like Roger Craig Smith as a voice actor, but his performance as Sonic isn't bad. It just doesn't feel like it represents the character as he is. And that goes with both the direction of the voice as well as the writing. I think both here have improved. The reason the writing is important to point out here is because it's written by Ian Flynn, who's been handling the Sonic comic series, which, if you're not into that stuff, and I haven't read it, I am going off of hearsay here, but a lot of people are thrilled with the comics. Apparently they get dark, there's some really good storytelling there, and that's super exciting to hear. So having that writer come on into a full AAA Sonic game is encouraging, and you can feel the difference in tone right away. Across the music, the voice direction, the script. Is it one of the best penned scripts you've ever seen before? No, but there is a notable difference here compared to other Sonic games. You'll still get the occasional sarcastic quip, but in this game, I feel like you can actually take Sonic a bit more serious. It feels like the stakes are higher here. And it's kind of fitting given the fact that Frontiers for a lot of people is like Sonic Team's last chance to really deliver a hit, because it feels like they're trying a lot of new things here. But I just want to say that I've been enjoying the direction of the story, the more serious tone of the story. I think it's a really, really good call because Sonic did have great emotional story moments throughout its series, specifically in Adventure 1 and 2. You know, the E102 Gamma storyline in Adventure 1, of course, what happens to Shadow in Sonic Adventure 2. Like, there are moments where you actually feel something, and I think that's what's best about Sonic is you're kind of coasting along and you go, wait, I felt something there. What was that? And that's kind of what Frontiers is reminding me of. And it's funny we mentioned Sonic Adventure because in a lot of ways, Frontiers does feel like the structure of a Sonic Adventure 3. So Sonic Adventure, for those who never played it, is structured with a hub world in the center of all these other levels that you can visit. So in Frontiers, as I'm sure you've already seen, there are these open world sections. Let me specify that again. open world sections. So it's not an interconnected Elden Ring open world. What you're getting here with Sonic Frontiers instead is multiple large-scale hubs. I am more partial to that type of design, if you've noticed with the games I like, the Outer Worlds, KOTOR, etc., etc. Of course, I love my open world games, but I am more partial to the hub-based structure. I think it's more digestible, it's more enjoyable, it breaks up the experience a little bit, and I think a game has a better pace because of it. So Sonic does benefit from that, and it does fit my taste a little bit more, but these hubs are big with lots of things to do within them. And like Sonic Adventure, these hubs will then connect you to what are called cyberspace levels, where you will have the more traditional Sonic levels. Now, if I were to cherry pick out one modern Sonic game that I legitimately have liked, even in my days of disliking Sonic strongly, it's 100% Sonic Generations. That game kicks butt. It feels good to play. I love all the callbacks it has. The story, though, is terrible, but whatever. I think it's just so fun to play. It's just a little too short. We're talking like 6 hours. So what I like with Sonic Frontiers here is it feels like Sonic Generations in its design as well. When you pop into a level, some are 3D, some are more 2D, and they're very quick, in and out. And the soundtrack in this game, oh my God, dude. Oh my God. Sonic is known to have bangers, but this game is loaded with them to the top, to the point where my voice is about to snap in half because it is so good, dude. I cannot emphasize enough how much they killed it with this soundtrack. And these cyberspace levels really create an interesting audio balance where the music in there is going hard, so it kind of calls my attention more. Whereas when you're in the hub world, it's a quiet piano gently playing in the background, very Breath of the Wild like in that manner. But if I were to really connect this game to anything, I think more of Super Mario Odyssey, which I think is a much better comparison. Like you could say tone wise, and specifically these hub areas, it is like Breath of the Wild, but that's as far as I would go. Otherwise, I really do feel like Mario Odyssey in the terms of gameplay design is what they were truly looking at. And I'll get into that in a moment. But yeah, these cyberspace levels just kick ass. They're the traditional Sonic levels that you know and love. They're quick, fast. There's a ton of mini missions within them where you collect those red stars or get X amount of rings, completing a set amount of time. I will say I'm playing this on the hardest difficulty because you do get a secret ending with that, which I don't want to miss out on. And I have personally liked that the challenge is still there in the terms of completing these missions, but it doesn't feel like you have to be a Sonic expert. I've seen some Sonic speedruns online. It's absolutely insane what some people can do. You don't need that skill level to play this game on hard, which was nice to see that I would still be getting some S ranks early on in the game, even though like I'd say I'm a decent Sonic player. So that was a nice, pleasant surprise. Also, I want to throw out there, I've been playing with my Logitech G Cloud gaming handheld device. Full disclosure, I am doing a sponsored video for that, but before any papers are signed, this thing kicks ass, and I've been playing it in handheld mode, it being Sonic Frontiers, and this experience feels really good. So if you kind of want like the handheld experience without, you know, like it being the Switch where it's kind of spotty for some in the terms of visuals and performance, like this might be a good play for you, or Steam Deck or something like that. I mean, it's just, it fits really well into handheld, and this has been a good way for me to rest a little bit as I'm kind of sick and also enjoy some Sonic Frontiers in bed. All right, let's talk about gameplay. One of the biggest complaints with this game has been the floating rails. They're just there. There's pop-in with them. The pop-in is true. As you've already seen, I'm playing on Series X, and yeah, there are definitely moments you'll like enter an area and it just boom appears in front of you. This game needs at least one more patch, I'd say, to polish that type of stuff up. It's also kind of weird on the tech front. This game has a ton of options that you can go through, but the default is 4K. And I don't know why they would do that, because like Sonic is best in 60 FPS. So make sure when you fire this up that you turn on the 60 FPS mode, because this game feels night and day in the terms of difference when it's in 4K versus 60 FPS, especially when we're talking Sonic. Obviously, this will differ from person to person. I don't give a single shit that these rails are floating in the sky. They're fun little platforming challenges that are conduits for me to enjoy the game and to get around quickly, and certain objectives you complete will unlock new rails that start to interconnect the entire level, and you'll be able to grind through all different parts of the game. I love that shit. That's awesome. So if you overthink it, I'm sure it'll distract you a little bit. But look, no one was talking shit when Sonic was doing Rail Canyon over in Sonic Heroes, where there literally are floating rails all over the goddamn level. But all of a sudden, Sonic Frontiers shows up and it dares to have floating rails like the rest of the series. And we're like, oh my God, no, you can't do that. Give me a break. So to me personally, I don't give a single shit about it. I'm sorry to come across so firm on that, but it really isn't that big of a deal. I don't know how else to put it, but it has been in most Sonic games, just random floating rails. Take it from someone who's played a lot of these games in the last year. But I understand some people wanted a little bit more, like make it something connected to the grass or the trees if it's in a forest biome. I respect that. Like, that's a more, I'd say, educated take, a more artistic take, and I think it could have improved the game in that respect. But then you'd have random floating branches, and is that okay? Or because it matches the art design? I don't know, but I just want to clear that up. That wasn't a big deal to me. What I did like is the way that this game is a collectathon, like many open world games, but because of the way Sonic plays as a video game character, the way you approach them is different. So sometimes you'll just do these random mini games like hitting little tiles on the ground or running in a hamster wheel or combat challenges. But since there's such a diversity of all of them, you're always doing something a little bit different and there's things distracting you where it's not like a Ubisoft game where like some gang shows up with a bunch of guns and you're just being harassed constantly. It's like, okay, give me a breather. This game lets you take it at your own pace, which is kind of funny given that the whole experience is accelerated given it's Sonic, but there's just so many little distractions and fun things to do. So the loop is basically this. You're going to unlock what are called portal gears by completing some of these challenges around the open world. When you unlock a portal gear, you can then take it to do the cyberspace level. Cyberspace levels being those specific old school Sonic style missions that I was telling you about earlier. Once you complete those, you get vault keys, which you can then use to unlock Chaos Emeralds around each of the respective hub areas. And then, as you're going around, the story is going to progress. You're also going to encounter bosses, which we'll talk about combat in a moment. But that's kind of your loop there. Exploring, doing what you want when you want. The game takes the shackles off you almost instantly. I'm talking in like 20, 30 minutes. You're pretty much free to do whatever you want. It does not hold your hand that much. And that is an interesting approach given that Sonic is back and it's strong. We're talking about a series that is very kid friendly. The movies are popping off. So I was surprised how just open-ended this was, but I think that's good because a lot of kids are going to get their first real dunk at the deep end here on what an open world game can be. So yeah, the loop works. Why? Because it's mostly built around platforming rather than combat, where combat in this game is good, and I'll get into why. But because it's built around platforming, it's about how you approach things, and that's different for everybody. And since this game feels good to control and play, which is not something you could say about many modern Sonic games, this is a staunch improvement and a strong framework that I believe will be even better going forward. Like, it has me really, really excited for future Sonic games. Now, combat, I probably shouldn't have waited to talk about this for so long because I love the feel of this. It is all mapped to mostly one button. Your homing attack button is the same button that you're going to be punching and kicking people with. It's kind of old school beat 'em up in that sense. Like, you'll dash in, you'll just throw a bunch of haymakers and then you'll bounce off of them. But there are other buttons like dodging, there's boosting so you can dash out of the way, there's air stomping, air bouncing, double jumping. There's all these different moves that you will use throughout combat, and I started to appreciate the versatility of the gameplay design because of that, where I'm able to do a number of different things with these same button inputs depending on if I'm in combat or if I'm exploring, and that would unlock new opportunities, new secrets, or just cool ways to take out bosses. One complaint I've seen, for example, is that these big gargantuan enemies really mess with the game because it's like the camera starts to screw up. You have to run directly up the side of this big boss creature, and if you don't do it that way, you're gonna get punished. I disagree because what I actually did was I followed that rule set the first time and I was like, that was kind of difficult. And then I ended up making my own rule set. So I did a combo, I beat up one of its arms, and then when I got blasted off of it, I hopped back in again through an air dash and landed on top again. I didn't even have to run back up. I circumvented the challenge through the game's tool set and created my own way around the boss and did double damage just like that. That was awesome to me, especially when you throw in a combo meter and you get this phantom rush attack where you do more damage, you do more quick attacks. It had a flow, it had a rhythm, and I took out this boss with, I don't want to say relative ease, but it removed some of the problems people had. I prefer a more flexible system with jank than something that's heavily structured. So yes, you could follow these portals up the side of this boss and take it out that way, and you will probably do that your first time, but you could also run up different sides of the boss that are completely open. You just won't have that speed boost. So I get that the visual design pulls you to go to those things, but you can do it your own way. It's not completely wide open where you could do whatever you want, but there is some flexibility here, and I appreciated that kind of on-the-fly customization in my gameplay. Speaking of which, as you're doing all this stuff, you're going to get skill points that you can then spend on skills in-game, which I gotta say, I really like this skill tree. I think a lot of open world games shoehorn in skill trees, and this certainly does that, but because each skill is heavily impactful to the gameplay, it is a moment of like, oh, sick, like, I got a new skill. Here we go. I prefer this type of skill tree because it's tight. It's not branching with like Sonic gets 5% more damage, now 10%, now 15%. It's like, no, Sonic gets this new thing now that you can do. And it's just that. And I like that because it feels like true progression throughout the game. But yeah, from the story to the music to the gameplay structure to the actual freedom of the gameplay, the combat, the writing, Sonic Frontiers feels like a true return to form to me as someone who's been playing a ton of Sonic games lately. And I do feel like it's a good entry point for those who are thinking like, you know what, I want to give Sonic a try. Like, this is a great starting point. You don't need any prior knowledge necessarily. Like, do you need familiarity with some characters? Yes. Will you maybe need to do a Google search or two? Possibly, but like, I don't think this is a bad starting point by any means. This is a good place to get familiar with Sonic and what makes Sonic good, in my opinion. But yeah, between the ability to just play this on Series X, play it in handheld, I've just been really enjoying my time with the game. I do recommend looking into it. It's a strong game, in my opinion, and I know that is coming from a Sonic fan, so keep that in mind, that there are some things that I don't really care about or critique with this game. I mean, its technical performance is strong in the terms of frame rate. I didn't have any dips, but like, yeah, there's popping. That does suck. But between that and the floating rails, like, I feel like I'm nitpicking, which is what is overall like a really refreshing approach to Sonic. So that's where I stand on the game. I'm looking forward to seeing your thoughts based off what I've read in my personal Patreon Discord and what I've read on my Retro Rebound comment section. A lot of you are already enjoying the game a lot, so I'm curious just to see what the feedback is. Let me know what you think of Sonic Frontiers down below. Other than that, I'm going to go rest my voice and not do any more video work. So take great care of yourselves, and I will see you shortly. Be sure to follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram. Those links are in the description down below. And a big thank you to all the patrons, all the members who really do support the content here and let me take rest days when I need them best. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.